Many bassists dream of one day getting so good that they can forget all about their technique and just get lost in the joy of playing music. Sadly though, most keep making mistakes that stop them from ever reaching that level. Whether that's position shifting, finger independence, stamina, or tension, these mistakes stem from following bad advice that sabotages their technique where it matters most: the fretting hand. After 16 years of teaching bass professionally, I see the same mistakes show up again and again, and they are all rooted in the same 4 bits of bad advice. But the good news is, once you can spot these mistakes and undo the damage that they cause, good fretting hand technique becomes automatic. And that is when you can finally forget about your technique and just play music. So in this video, I'll show you 4 pieces of awful fretting hand advice that you need to stop following, the mistakes following this bad advice causes you to make, and then I'll show you exactly how to fix them. If you've ever been told to play bass with a 1 finger per fret system, you're not alone. It's one of the most common bits of advice out there. And in theory, it kind of makes sense. 4 fingers, 4 frets. 1, 2, 3, 4. But in reality, especially down the lower end of the neck, this can cause a lot of problems. It causes your hand to stay out in this fanned position like this. And over a prolonged period of time, that fanned position creates a lot of muscle tension, it bends your wrists, and that results in a lot of muscle fatigue. Never mind, if you're a player with slightly smaller hands, it's really difficult to make that stretch in the first place. So let me show you what to do instead. This is the approach I'm going to teach in my live fingerstyle workshop, which is going out on September 21st, so links in the description below if you want to check that out. But the approach, in short, is to divide the neck into roughly 3 zones. There's the low zone, which is from roughly the 7th fret down. This is where you use 4 fingers over a span of 3 frets, expanding your hand only when needed. Then there's the middle zone, which is from roughly the 7th fret right up to about the 17th fret. This is where 1 finger per fret will work fine. And then there's the high zone, which is anywhere above that, and depending on the size of your hands and the shape of your bass, you might want to consider cutting to using just 3 fingers to cover all the stretches. The idea is that as you move between these zones, you subtly shift how your fingers relate to the neck. And of course, these zones are a rough guide. They will change depending on the size of your hands personally or the size of your own bass. But the key here is to try this out for yourself and see what zones feel comfortable to you. Now in a minute, we're going to look at some really bad advice on how to set your bass up. But before we do that, there's one other myth we need to bust about the way that you practice. You've probably heard people say practice slowly 1,000 times. And at first, this isn't bad advice, especially if you're working on a new technique, tricky finger patterns, or a new hand position. Slowing it down does help to make the technique clean and accurate. But it also traps bass players in a plateau, and most of them end up staying there. It's a great way to get started, but what should you do once you've made that start and you want the next steps so you can keep progressing? With my private students, guys like Jay or guys like Tom on the screen here, we take a different approach. We turn real songs or parts of real songs into small, focused etudes. Now, if you're not familiar with the term, etudes are short musical studies that target specific technical skills like fretting hand technique, but in a way that make you feel like you're playing real music. Typically, they push your technique much harder, and they are great at bridging the gap between doing exercises with slow practice and playing real music. And because they're more realistic, whilst they train your fretting hand, they're also great at training other things like your sense of plucking hand technique, your sense of timing, your sense of feel, your sense of groove, and all the other skills that you need to combine together when you're at a rehearsal or on stage playing a gig. So don't get stuck on slow practice forever. Upgrade to doing etudes and you'll definitely feel the difference the next time you're on stage playing with your band. But this isn't the only thing that will make a huge difference to your gig. There's one really simple thing that you can do that will make a huge impact almost immediately. So let's look at that next. If your bass isn't set up right, then you're definitely working much harder than you need to, and this can be one of the main reasons why you end up with cramps, hand fatigue, or even locking up mid-song. Yet, despite this, I will still hear people say things like, oh, your setup doesn't matter if you've got a lot of hand strength. Let the bass hang around your knees because it looks cooler. Or just don't bother with a strap if you're playing sat down. Now, this is all terrible advice because the truth is a good setup is one of the easiest ways to protect your hands and also boost your performance the next time you play. There's actually a full setup guide included in my fretting hand workshop for exactly this reason. And if you were to look inside it, you would find these 4 big ground rules. Number 1 is action. You want to keep it low enough to make fretting easy, but high enough to avoid fret buzz. Number 2 is string gauge. Generally speaking, lighter strings will be a little bit easier to fret, but they will sound smaller, and heavier gauges are the reverse. They tend to take a bit more effort to fret, but they do have a much bigger tone. Number 3 is a strap. Definitely get a good strap. It's completely worth it. You want to get one that holds your bass roughly in place so that your fretting hand isn't actually having to hold up your bass as you play. Get one like this that's quite wide and quite thick so the weight of the bass is evenly dispersed across your shoulder, and definitely set your strap at a height that will keep both your wrists roughly straight. And number 4 is get your setup done right. If you're not confident doing it yourself, just pay somebody else to do it. It's not that expensive. I still take my basses to shops to get them set up, and usually there's someone in any guitar shop that you can find that will do a really great job. So get your bass set up right and your fretting hand will definitely thank you for it. But if things do go wrong and you get cramps, tension, or even playing pains, what should you do? Well, in this situation, there is one bit of bad advice that you must avoid at all costs. And point number 4, we've definitely saved the absolute worst until last. It is playing through the pain. Now, quick disclaimer here, I'm not offering any kind of medical advice or any kind of guarantee against injury with this video. If you've got an injury, go and see a medical professional because this video is not trying to diagnose or treat any of your problems. I'm just trying to say that in my personal experience of having done that and having seen other people do it, it's always been a really bad idea. So I still get students who have got playing injuries and playing pains, but have been told somehow, somewhere by someone that their hands will just get used to it, that it will toughen up their hands, or worst of all, you can play through the pain if you just stretch more. Now again, I'm not trying to give out medical advice, and I'm not trying to say that stretching isn't useful, because personally I found that it can be sometimes. But playing through the pain is absolutely not useful. And when it comes to things like stretching, the problem as I see it is that most people never really draw a distinction between simple fatigue and injury. They can feel similar, and yes, in my own personal experience, fatigue has led to injury before. But for me, when I was fatigued, it just meant that my muscles were tired. But when I think back to times that I've been injured, an injury meant that I'd either damaged something in my arms or I was doing something very wrong. And if I was to pick up these injuries and just keep playing, I was only going to make a bad thing much worse. And simply stretching more wasn't going to do it. Hoping that it would be a bit like me watching a high jump athlete run up, jump over the bar, and land with both their legs completely locked, with the knees locked like that. And then when they blew both their knees out, just saying, oh, well, they should have stretched and warmed up a bit more. Of course, that isn't true. Speaking purely from my own personal experience, if you are in pain when you play, stop. Rest, recover, go and speak to a medical professional who is qualified to give you actual help. And when you can play, go and speak to a professional bass teacher who can change the way that you play to make it more efficient and build up your stamina through teaching you how to do things the right way. But here's the next big question. If you want to play more gigs but you're worried about getting fretting hand fatigue, how do you build fretting hand stamina to make sure that you're not just getting through them, but that you're playing your very best right until the very last song? Well, there are 5 specific things that you can do, and I know that they work because in 2018, I used them to get through playing 300 gigs in the space of a year. I've done a video explaining what all 5 of those things are, so to learn about them, click up here and watch that video next.